Hey, good day. I hope you are safe and healthy. I wanted to talk a little bit about how to write Midi for virtual instruments in a way that feels somewhat organic. This will be a two-part video series, and this is part one. There's a lot of factors that go into whether an instrument sounds real or not. One of them is the quality of the instrument itself. So right now I have an older session open for a song that you've already heard if you've checked out my channel. It's called Unrequited Wave, and there's a vibraphone part in that song. The MIDI notes are here across, and I tend to break them up into loopable chunks and perfect the loops for human-like qualities, and then I perpetuate them across the song and create variations from there. So first, I'm just going to show how important it is to have a certain quality of virtual instrument. You can't really get a human-sounding performance out of an instrument that doesn't have a lot of nuance. I'm not bashing this particular Kontakt standard library here for something called the Gentleman, which is an upright piano. I'm sure it's quite good under the right circumstances, but you can feel how it's not particularly dimensional when I play it across this. It does sound like a piano, but does it sound particularly wonderful? I don't think so. This is the part I ended up with, and it's on something called Cassette Vibraphone. It's from the Phono loop. I purchased it online a number of years ago, and I love it. But let's just go to the stock patch. So this is the patch without any modulation. There's something you need to consider, which is that even the best recorded samples are going to need a certain amount of modulation. And this patch that I created, I used every tool at my disposal here. There's a couple of LFOs built in that can control different aspects of this vibraphone. There's a wow and flutter control. There's a filter that can be used to move up and down. Now in this stock patch, everything is zeroed out. It also has some insert effects down here and send effects. So I'm pretty much using everything that's available under this instrument to make it sound as human as possible. I will just take away the stock patch now and replace it with mine. Now don't underestimate automating as well. I have the filter automated. I'm going to turn off the looping aspect of this now so it can continue. I'm automating the filter. I think I'm automating the attack and decay of the vibraphone itself. I am not starting the sample at the exact start. I'm allowing it to start a little bit later, and that creates a different feeling. Now you can hear the filter going down. There's also a reverb internal to the instrument used, as well as after the fact. There's a few other effects here in the effects chain, but for today, we're really just going to talk about MIDI. So let me show you something here. Let's zero in on one MIDI clip here. I have the MIDI open here so you can take a look. And one very important point here is accenting. So first you'll notice these notes aren't perfectly on the grid. I sort of flip-flop back and forth on whether this is necessary or whether it adds something. And it's really just a feel thing. It depends how the rest of the track feels. Sometimes being perfectly on the grid, whether that grid is straight or swung, is a really good idea. There are other times when shifting things around a little bit just changes the emphasis, the way things land with other instruments, and creates something that is bigger than the sum of its parts. So I think that's something you really just have to feel out and experience. Now, the accenting, I am 100% an advocate for. If you create a bunch of notes that have exactly the same velocity, notice the velocity down here is not changing a whole lot, but it is making an absolutely huge difference. There's something else that I should explain about this velocity, and you can see the beats of the bar here. So the quarter notes, or the stronger beats, should often, when accenting an instrument, be stronger in intensity. And what I mean by that is the downbeat and the offbeat, but not the subdivisions. So if you're in 4/4, which is pretty common for most people for writing, you do want your quarter notes, where the kick would hit, basically, or the snare might hit. Those locations, usually musicians will accent those a little higher. So what you can see here is that the strongest beats have the strongest accent, and it sort of depends on the melody as well. So let's listen to this melody and see if we can actually pick up this change in volume. And on a good sampled instrument, this isn't just going to change the volume of the instrument, it's actually going to change what we call the timbre. The timbre is the tone of the note when it hits. And by raising the volume, we're going to change that. Sensitivity is really important too. If I drag all of these volumes up so that they're very high, it will not sound very sensitive. Finding the sweet spot of an instrument for its tone is incredibly important, even on a virtual instrument. Let's try this. All the sensitivity is lost. Let's see if we can find a sweet spot. I think that's pretty much the exact spot I was before, maybe just a tad louder, but you get my point. By changing the velocity of this instrument, we don't just change the volume with a good sampled instrument, we also change the tone. Well, I hope I helped you find some kind of sweet spot today in your learning adventure. Play around, have fun, and keep up the great work/play.